All right, here in all its glory is my lunch reenactment. This is taking place midway through a lesson about primary voting in Texas during the 2020 primaries. So, now that we've read about the 2020 primaries, look at the data on this table, which is from the article we read. And we're going to think about that 25.2% that we see in the 2020 column. I want you to think, is that 25.2% or 0.252 a marginal or a conditional distribution? Take 1 minute to think for yourself and type your answer in the chat. Pause for 60 seconds. Okay, time's up. I see several people that answered conditional and others who wrote marginal. So we want to discuss now, how did you decide? Can somebody who thinks that 0.252 is conditional, please explain to the class? And so then students explained that they thought it was conditional because they were looking at the percent who voted. We're not looking at the percent who voted overall. They're only looking at the subtotal from 2020. Thank you. Does anyone agree with this? Can you back up what was just said? And then another student explained that they thought it would only be marginal if they were adding up all of the years to find the percent of the total. Okay, so you've explained how you can make sense of 0.252 as a conditional distribution. And I see that somebody else wrote that 0.252 is marginal. So for those of you who thought it was marginal, how did you explain the data to yourself so that it was marginal? And then students said they were looking at it differently and they were thinking of adding up the Republican and Democrat votes. So they were actually looking at percents of the totals, and that would make it marginal. Thank you. That's a good point. And you're all describing two different ways to think about this data. So if all of the years are included, like the first person said, then 0.252 for only 2020, so the condition that is 2020, that would be conditional. But if we were looking at 2020 alone, only all of the totals for 2020, then like we were saying, 0.252 could be marginal. So it's important for us to think about the context when we answer as to how we're looking at these totals. So for your next task, we are going to look only at the data for 2020. So using the information you got from the article, you're going to create a two-way table describing whether and how registered voters in Texas voted. So notice that not all of the numbers that you need to fill in this table are given in the article. So you may be able to find some numbers directly from the article that you read, and some of them you might have to extrapolate for yourself and find out how you can calculate them. And others might actually be unknown. So it's really up to you to discover as many of the values you can. And if you think that there's something you can't find, be ready to defend that. Be ready to explain to us, why was it that you couldn't find it? You'll have 5 to 10 minutes to work, and then we're going to discuss the tables that you made together. Any questions for the good of the group before we start work? Yes, you may choose either to draw on paper, or you can actually write directly on this Nearpod slide, depending on what you're more comfortable with. Any other questions? Okay, your time for this task starts now.